What happens when one of Hollywood's most fearless actors walks into a morning show expecting a conversation and ends up in a confrontation? That's exactly what happened when Tom Hardy sat across from George Stephanopoulos on Good Morning America. What began as a friendly interview turned into a standoff that left one man exposed and the other leaving in anger. And trust me, this talk show won't disappoint you. It'll be worth every second of your time. The interview starts smoothly, polished, like every other morning on Good Morning America. George Stephanopoulos flashes that confident newsroom grin. "Tom Hardy," he begins, his tone warm but practiced. "Your new movie looks insane. You're still out there doing your own stunts, taking hits, flying off rooftops. But seriously, at your age, how long can you keep doing that?" The question lands like a jab wrapped in silk. Tom doesn't answer right away. He smiles, just a small, knowing one, and the pause stretches a little too long. "I didn't realize passion came with an expiration date," he finally says, calm and steady. The room goes still for half a second. It's the kind of line that sounds polite, but cuts all the same. George laughs it off, leaning forward as if to keep control of the tempo. "Hey, come on, man," he says with that quick charm. "You know me, I'm just being honest." Tom tilts his head slightly, eyes fixed on him. "Calling it honesty doesn't make it less disrespectful," he replies. The words are soft, but they carry weight. George clears his throat, a flicker of tension showing through the smile. "I just mean," he adds, "people are curious." That's all. Tom doesn't blink. "There's a line between curiosity and provocation," he says, his voice low and controlled. "You might want to learn the difference." That line lands hard. For a few seconds, the studio feels smaller, tighter. George crosses one leg over the other, giving a short, awkward laugh as if to signal he's still in charge. "Fair enough," he says. "But look, the viewers, they just want to know. When do you think it'll be time to pass the torch? You know, let the next generation shine?" Tom leans back, slow and deliberate, his expression unreadable. "I'm not racing your clock, George," he says. "I'm running on mine." The air between them hums with tension now, quiet but heavy. It's the kind of moment something shifts, something small but dangerous. George shifts in his chair, his smile tighter now, his tone losing the morning show warmth it started with. "You've had one of the greatest runs in Hollywood, Tom," he says, tapping his pen lightly against his note cards. "But let's be real. Every actor hits that point where the peak starts to fade. You ever think maybe you've already passed yours?" The words drop like stones, disguised as conversation. Tom doesn't flinch. He just looks at George, steady, unblinking. "Are you asking?" he says slowly. "Or are you grading me?" The question hangs there, clean and sharp. It's not angry, it's surgical. George chuckles, a quick, nervous sound that doesn't quite land. No, he insists, waving a hand. "Don't take it the wrong way. I'm just being truthful." Tom leans forward slightly, elbows on his knees, voice level but colder now. "That's not truth, George," he says. "That's ego dressed up as honesty." George's smile falters. "You're reading too much into it, man," he says, eyes darting toward the cameras. "Don't make it heavier than it is." Tom shakes his head once, slow and deliberate. "You made it heavy the moment you tried to sound brave by belittling someone else." George straightens his tie, regaining his grin, trying to pivot the mood. "Hey, that's just the nature of strong personalities," he says. "People who act tough usually hate stepping back." Tom's gaze sharpens, his tone still calm, but now carrying steel. "And people who hide behind being direct usually can't stand being challenged." The line lands like a low blow, clean, controlled, and absolutely final. The tension turns solid. George laughs softly, but his eyes flicker with something uneasy. Tom doesn't move, doesn't raise his voice. He just lets the silence breathe, then speaks again, quiet, but exact. Respect isn't optional, he says. Not for me. Not for anyone. The words settle in the air, heavy and undeniable. George takes a breath, forcing a half smile, but his tone is starting to sound less like curiosity and more like provocation. Look, Tom, he says, his voice smooth but tight. The audience loves you, no doubt. But they're always looking for something new faces, new energy. Isn't it time to let someone else take the torch? It's the same question, just sharper this time, coated in sugar but lined with steel. Tom doesn't bite. He leans back, voice steady and grounded. The audience doesn't want a new face, he says. They want something real. What they don't want is a staged ambush dressed up as journalism. The words don't rise in volume, they just cut cleaner. George blinks, caught off guard for a moment. Ambush? He repeats, trying to sound amused, but the smirk doesn't reach his eyes. Tom nods once. Let me ask you something, he says. Do you ask questions to understand, or just to confirm what you already believe? The line lands heavy, like a door quietly locking behind them. George hesitates, the practiced rhythm of the segment slipping. He opens his mouth, but nothing comes out fast enough to fill the silence. Tom doesn't let the pause go to waste. His voice is calm, almost conversational, but every word is sharp-edged. Here's how this works, he says. You build a setup, you call me old, you hint it's time to step aside. Then you label it fair journalism. You put me in a box where the only right answer fits your headline. He tilts his head, eyes locked on George. You're not being honest, George. You're being clever. There's a difference. For the first time, George looks unsure, his trademark control slipping just a little. The smile fades, replaced by the kind of silence that feels too long for live TV. Tom doesn't press, doesn't gloat. He just sits there, calm, letting the truth speak for itself. Not loud, not showy. George straightens up, a hint of frustration flickering through his smile. Come on, Tom, he says, shifting in his seat. You know what I'm saying. It's not just me. People are talking. Everyone's wondering if maybe it's time for something new. The phrase people are talking slips out like a shield, but Tom doesn't let it slide. He leans forward slightly, voice steady and calm, but there's a bite under the calm. Everyone is the weakest way to hide behind your own opinion, he says. If you think something, just own it. Don't hand it to a faceless crowd. George's grin stiffens. The cameras are still rolling, but suddenly it feels like they're in a smaller room. Tom doesn't look away. You call this a tough question, he says, tone even, deliberate. I call it what it is, using age as clickbait. The room goes quiet for half a second before George forces a chuckle, his voice dipping low. You're taking this too seriously, he mutters, but the words sound thinner now. Tom shakes his head slowly. I'm taking it exactly as seriously as it deserves. Then Tom's tone changes, still calm, but sharper, focused like a blade. Let's make sure we're being clear here, he says, one hand resting on his knee. Are you asking to understand, or to prove yourself right? He doesn't wait for George to answer. If my answer doesn't fit the story you want to tell, would you still air it? Another pause. George's eyes dart toward the camera, searching for a foothold. Tom presses once more, clean and precise. And tell me, George, would you ask that same question to a man your own age sitting in this chair? The words hang in the air, solid and impossible to dodge. George stops mid-breath, caught. The silence that follows isn't dead, it's charged. Tom leans back, letting it settle, his tone turning quiet but firm. Good journalists listen, he says. Bad ones perform speeches and call them interviews. The last line lands like a closing statement, not shouted, not dramatic, just absolute. And in that instant, the power dynamic flips again. George may still be holding the microphone, but Tom Hardy is holding the room. Tom leans forward, elbows resting on his knees, his tone suddenly sharper but still calm. Let's flip it for a second, he says, eyes locked on George. One short question for you. Why does my age have anything to do with the quality of my work? It's not confrontational, it's surgical. The kind of question that doesn't need volume because the logic itself hits like a punch. George hesitates, caught off guard. His smile flickers, then returns, weaker this time. Well, the public just wonders, he stammers. It's about transparency. People want to know how long someone can stay at the top. His voice trips over the word public, using it like a life raft. Tom doesn't let him off the hook. Transparency, he repeats, slow and measured. That means saying I think this, not hiding behind the public thinks. He leans back slightly, eyes steady. If you have an opinion, own it. Don't rent it out to the people. George swallows hard, trying to recover, but every attempt sounds like a half step too late. His rhythm, the perfectly timed cadence of a TV veteran, has vanished. The silence between them starts to feel heavier than the lights above. Tom presses once more, voice calm but cutting. Either your question has a basis, then say what standard you're using, or it's just bait, and if it's bait, call it what it is. The logic is airtight, each word closing a door George can't reopen. There's no way out, no clever segue left. Tom isn't raising his voice, but the authority in his tone makes it clear who's running this conversation now. Then comes the line that freezes the room. Tom sits back, his expression unreadable. I don't sign contracts to co-star in your trap, he says, his tone almost soft. It's not an insult. It's a declaration. For a moment, even the hum of the studio seems to pause. George opens his mouth, but nothing comes out. The balance has officially shifted. Tom Hardy isn't just defending himself anymore, he's taking control of the interview, and George knows it. Tom sits back, the tension no longer something he avoids. It's something he controls. His tone is calm, but carries the weight of a quiet verdict. You keep saying you're just being honest, he says, but real honesty is a risk, for both sides. Right now, I'm the only one taking it. The room feels smaller again. George tries to laugh it off, but it doesn't come out right. His face twitches with a half smile that never reaches his eyes. Tom doesn't blink. He's steady, focused, the calm center of a storm George accidentally created. Then Tom leans in slightly, his next words sharp and exact. If you actually respected me, you wouldn't ask when I'll stop, he says. You'd ask why I'm still this good. The line hits clean, no raise in tone, no anger, just truth laid bare. George's mouth opens, but the words don't follow. He knows he's been cornered. Every tough question he's thrown has come back sharper, heavier. Tom just sits there, letting the silence make the point for him. You talk about asking hard questions, Tom continues. But a hard question doesn't humiliate. It enlightens. Yours doesn't do that. His voice stays even, the rhythm precise. It doesn't sound rehearsed, just real. Each word lands like a weight dropped into still water, quiet, but impossible to ignore. Finally, Tom looks straight at him, no smile, no hint of aggression, just calm clarity. You're not looking for truth, he says. You're looking for a small, cheap moment you can cut and paste into a fake victory. The statement hangs in the air, heavy and final. George doesn't answer. He can't. The cameras might still be rolling, but at that moment, everyone in the room, and everyone watching, knows exactly who just won the exchange. Tom leans forward, his voice low but clear, every word measured like he's cutting the last thread holding the conversation together. Let's be straight about this, he says. Either we talk about the work, or we stop pretending this is honesty. The line lands hard, not shouted, not angry, but solid and final. George sits back, crosses his arms, that familiar smirk creeping up again like a defense mechanism. Sounds like I hit a nerve, he says. Getting a little heated there, aren't you? Tom doesn't blink. His tone doesn't move an inch. Not heated, he replies quietly. Just tired of the dirt. That silence afterward is different. Thick, heavy, conclusive. Tom reaches up, unclipping his mic with the kind of calm that makes everyone watching stop breathing. There's no drama in the movement, no big gesture, just precision. He sets the mic down on the table, steady and deliberate. "I respect myself enough," he says softly, "not to keep playing along." The sound of the mic touching wood is louder than any word George says next. George gives a short, sarcastic laugh, trying to grab back the power he's already lost. "So that's it?" he says. "You walk out when the questions get tough?" Tom glances at him one last time, his voice quiet but firm. "No," he says. "I walk out when the game turns toxic." The way he says it, slow, almost conversational, makes it sting more than if he'd shouted it. There's no coming back from that line. Tom stands, straightens his jacket, and adjusts his cufflinks like he's resetting himself before leaving a room he's already outgrown. He doesn't look back. Every step is deliberate, steady, unhurried. Halfway to the exit, he stops just long enough to say the words that will replay across the internet for days. "You call that honesty," he says. "I call it what it really is, small, and I don't do small." Then he walks off, the quiet between his steps louder than any applause could ever be. The camera lingers on the two empty chairs, one where the questions fell apart, and one where the answers never needed to be said. George sits frozen, still staring at the spot where Tom was sitting just moments ago. The cameras are still rolling, the studio lights still burning, but his voice, usually so quick, so sure, just won't come out right. He opens his mouth, trying to deliver the polished outro that's second nature to him, but the words stall halfway. Everything he's about to say sounds hollow now. Every honest question he asked has already been exposed for what it was. And for the first time in a long career of controlling conversations, George is the one left without a script. The silence feels heavier than any line he could have spoken. Meanwhile, Tom doesn't need to return, doesn't need to explain. His message is already echoing beyond that studio, the kind of clarity that doesn't fade when the lights go out. Real strength, he'd said, is knowing when to walk away. It isn't defiance, it's definition. His calm exit said more than any heated argument ever could, and that calm, that composure, has now taken on a life of its own, playing back on screens, replayed in minds, quoted, shared, respected. George finally exhales, his eyes fixed on the empty chair across from him. The space feels too large, too quiet. It's not just absence, it's judgment. He realizes that silence, the very thing he used to fear most on live TV, has just become the sharpest answer he's ever received. For once, the great interviewer understands. Sometimes the loudest truth doesn't come from speaking, it comes from walking away. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss another explosive moment from television's most unpredictable talk shows. Thanks for watching, and trust me, the next one will hit even harder.